Let's turn from there to the other big story today, the vaccination story. In a bid to boost India's fight against COVID-19, the country has begun vaccinating all people above the age of 45 without comorbidities. But how well is it working on the ground? Is there a greater need for universalizing the vaccine to include all citizens over 18? A news report now on India's phase 3 vaccination.
India begins a new phase in its anti-COVID vaccination drive. Starting Thursday, all citizens above the age of 45 are getting the vaccine. In Mumbai, a city in the middle of a raging second wave, queues were seen at many centres.
Maharashtra has received 27 lakh doses for the phase 3 of vaccination. Almost about 28,000 to 30,000 people are getting vaccinated in Mumbai per day. The target is to take it to 1 lakh so that the cases of COVID which are coming out in Mumbai and many other parts of the cities of Maharashtra reduce and people get vaccinated as early as possible.
The national capital too saw good response, as citizens lined up at government and private hospitals to get the vaccine.
1st of April, all above the age of 45 years have now come to get themselves vaccinated, as the government has opened vaccinations for all. Now you do not need to show any certificate of comorbidity when you come to take the vaccine.
I got vaccinated about half an hour back and I'm absolutely fine. No complications thus far, no comorbidities. My wife is asthmatic, but she doesn't seem to be suffering either, so we're fine.
Even as India expands its vaccine drive, industry voices are urging the government to give a bigger role to the private sector. Mahindra Group Chairman Anand Mahindra has suggested giving the vaccine to the all age groups in Maharashtra where cases are spiralling. He says involving private sector companies will speed up the rollout. Biocon chief Kiran Majumdar-Shaw echoes Mahindra's views. The centre has meanwhile made it mandatory for all the states to administer vaccines on all days this month. This means jabs will be given on gazetted holidays also. Over 34 crore people, or more than 25%, are now eligible for the vaccine in the current phase. With Milan Sharma in New Delhi and Mustafa Sheikh in Mumbai, Bureau Report, India Today.
So has the time come for a drastic shift in our vaccination policy? Universalize it, involve the private sector, decentralize it. You heard Anand Mahindra there. Well, joining me now is another corporate leader, the MD of Bajaj Auto, Rajiv Bajaj joins me. Appreciate your joining us, Rajiv. We've seen in the last few days several business persons, Anand Mahindra, Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, Azim Premji, coming out first against any possible lockdown in the context of the COVID surge in the case of Anand Mahindra, but also calling for a universalization of the vaccine. As one of the original proponents against a lockdown, do you share their concerns? Forget about lockdown, focus on universalizing the vaccine.
Certainly, Rajdeep, if I may say so. I was the first man on that moon, maybe as early as this time last year. And ever since then, I've been saying that what is fundamentally a porous lockdown anywhere in the world, not only in India, as all lockdowns are bound to be because there is no airtight lockdown feasible anywhere, such a porous lockdown is a dud as far as the virus is concerned, because the virus hangs around and then, you know, the minute you open up, you see what you're seeing now, and then you give it fancy names like a second wave and a third wave, etc. And at the same time, it's a draconian as far as people and their livelihoods are concerned. And I think that's exactly what we've seen in the last 1 year.
So are you also therefore with the other business leaders when they say let's universalize the vaccine instead? Time has come to ensure everyone above the age of 18 gets the vaccine at the earliest. That's a better way to tackle the COVID surge than any form of a lockdown, limited or otherwise.
Well, if those are the only two options, then certainly from whatever little I know, I would agree. I mean, I can say this to you that sitting in Pune, Adar Poonawala is a good friend. And for the longest time, I've heard from him that he is in a position to see more vaccines than he's doing today. And why exactly we are not seeing that whether for administration through the government distribution, government controlled distribution, or allowing the private sector to go ahead and do that. I'm not clear. I read some time back a tweet by Mr. Premji saying that if private sector were permitted to ally with government, perhaps we can vaccinate 500 million people a month. If I remember right, that's what he said. So why exactly aren't we moving faster in that direction? Frankly, is not clear to me.
You're giving us important news points again. Like Mr. Mahindra, Mr. Premji, therefore, do you really believe that the private sector, though, will rise up to the challenge if tomorrow the government decides to involve them in vaccinating people? Is the private sector in the country willing to invest in such a large mega project in your view?
No, I wouldn't go so far as to say what Mr. Premji has said, simply because I don't know enough to make a comment like that. I was just saying that when a person of his stature and experience makes a comment of that nature, I think we have to give it due weightage.
You know, in a way, the fact is, Rajiv Bajaj, the real debate and dilemma last year was around lives and livelihoods. We need to save lives, but we also need to protect livelihoods. How important do you think this issue is? Because this is what, in a way, as the country faces the so-called second wave, becomes a dilemma again. Do you still see livelihoods at stake, given that the economy now seems to be slowly turning around? Do you believe that remains still a major concern? Therefore, you still would say no to a lockdown?
See, absolutely. I mean, I was always in favor of what I understand to be herd immunity, which to me means that essentially you secure the vulnerable, who are vulnerable by age or comorbidities, etc. Of the young and healthy who can work from home, you allow them to do that. Enable them to do that. And the rest of us, for example, if I am assembling a motorcycle firsthand with my hand, then certainly I need to go to work to be able to do that, of course, while exercising all caution. Now, this to me is the simplistic description of herd immunity. What we have unfortunately seen is not herd immunity, but a herd mentality. First, there was a herd mentality which effectively said lock down everybody irrespective. And in recent months, there seems to be a herd mentality which seems to suggest that from election melas to Kumbh melas, everybody can be out doing what they please, when they please, without wearing masks and respecting social distancing. So, we've just gone, I think, from one extreme to the other, completely ignored the middle path, which would have given us the best of lives and livelihoods, I feel.
From your vantage position, though, Mr. Bajaj, do you still believe we are in a better place today from the economic point of view, with various projections, the economic survey, the World Bank suggesting potentially double-digit growth in 21-22? Or do you believe that we are still facing a steep incline to get anywhere close to even pre-COVID levels when it comes to growth and jobs and the key issues, in a way, when the key economic challenges?
Well, I'm not an economist, so I don't have that top-down helicopter view, but I can offer you two insights, bottom-up basis my company and my industry. Number one, I think the answer is it depends what industry you're part of. Obviously, if you're part of travel, hotel, restaurant, mall, gym, etc., you're screwed essentially. Whereas some other business sectors are clearly doing better. Within the auto industry, you can see that the car which is bought by the general manager or the president of the company is doing well because he didn't lose his job. His salary was not cut back. Even if it was cut back, it didn't make much of a difference. Whereas the frontline worker, the frontline supervisor, the frontline manager, not only in a large company like Bajaj Auto, but more importantly, for example, in my supply chain at the supplier end and dealer end. I mean, those are the people, now whether you call them formal, informal workers, whatever it is, but those are the masses. That is the Aam Aadmi who has been hit very hard. And you can see the impact of that on the two-wheeler industry, within which I can tell you, for example, 125 or 150cc and above, the so-called bigger motorcycle, which is a little more of a lifestyle purchase, is still growing, doing well. But the entry-level 100 to 125cc motorcycle is hit very hard. Now, when I said this in September, so many people jumped down my throat. People in media, the financial community, even from industry, saying, no, government has announced 20,000 crore something, some lots of zeros there in that package, and rural mein aisa hoga or urban mein aisa hoga and everything will be great. But what has happened? I mean, the numbers are there for everyone to see.
We keep hearing though of a V-shaped recovery. The chief economic advisor also keeps saying this. Do you therefore believe that any recovery is sector by sector, and therefore this is the wrong time for any exuberance to be displayed?
No, not at all. I think a company like ours has done relatively better because half of what we make is exported. So we are in a very fortunate position. But I shudder to think of those companies who count among their customers largely the domestic market, that to the people at the lower end of the pyramid, if I may say so. And that is where, frankly, we've been really short in supporting both people and organizations. I mean, let me give you one data point that a company like Bajaj Auto, if it were to completely stop operations, what would be its standstill cost, as we call it, for a year? Which means that we would make nothing, we would sell nothing, we would pay all wages to everyone, as we did through the lockdown period, and we would have some non-operating income from our financial investments. That comes to 750 crores a year. That is the standstill cost of Bajaj Auto. The reason I'm sharing this with you is to say to you that today a company like ours has 20,000 crores of cash on its books. That means Bajaj Auto can go on for 30 years standing still and still survive. But the vast majority of the MSME cannot. And they don't have a voice. I mean, everybody in this country only looks at BSE and NSE. What about MSME?
Good line. Everybody in this country looks at BSE and NSE, not at MSME. Let me therefore ask you in conclusion. You're speaking today of opening up your minds, of opening up people's minds. You gave us a lovely line. We are moving, you're worried from herd immunity to herd mentality. I presume when you say open up minds, it means when it comes to vaccinations, universalize. When it comes to economy, think of more imaginative solutions to COVID-19. Do you think it's going to happen? Or do you fear that the Indian mind at the moment is a bit closed? It's very state-driven. You need to open it up. Not that the government knows best, but maybe the people know best. How do you open up people's minds on an issue like COVID-19?
What has, I don't know about Indian minds, but I can tell you what has proved very valuable to me through these 12 months. These four thoughts. First, we must talk about relevance. I keep seeing these comparisons in terms of infection rates, in terms of death rates with Western countries, US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, etc. But when it comes to a stimulus, nobody talks about Western countries, then suddenly that discussion doesn't happen anymore. So first of all, my submission would be, what is relevant is to compare ourselves with Asian countries, with Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar. And then suddenly we don't look very good in terms of our infection rates and death rates as per the data that I saw, assuming that was correct. So I think first we must come from a point of relevance. Second, I would say, is responsibility. I think each individual has to take responsibility. It's not the government that is going to save our ass, frankly speaking. If I am a comorbid person, I better take care of myself. How I secure myself in my house or in some other dwelling is up to me. If I am a person who can work from home, I should work from home. If I need to go to work, I should go to work with caution. The other day I was in Bombay and I saw 1 million people on Juhu Beach. If people are going to do this, what do you expect Mr. Thackeray to do? There's nothing he can do. So people should act responsibly. And at the same time, government should also act very, very responsibly. Today, if the Maharashtra government, and this is true of all governments, is closing down businesses again, and if the chief minister is going to say that, look, second lockdown happened in the UK also, the chancellor in the UK doled out £9 billion or something like that. So how about, some help, particularly for the small businesses and the MSMEs in the state of Maharashtra? You can't only look at part of the picture and justify your argument. So we should all behave responsibly. The third thing I would say is that we must be realistic, because at the end of it, now, even if you take 2 shots of the vaccine, it seems that you are going to get infected. The only solace is that your infection will not be that bad and you almost certainly will not die. And government must also be realistic equally, and I would reiterate, not be so keen on playing to the media optics. And finally, to answer your question, I hope, I would say that there has to be a sense of reflection. As an individual, I must ask myself, what is at the root of this, which I believe is fundamentally my immunity. And then in terms of my diet, my exercise, my rest, and things that I personally believe in, like homeopathy and meditation, I think I need to refocus my life by reflecting on these things that can keep my vitality up, keep my immunity up. And I think government must do the same. I mean, why are we still scrambling for medical infrastructure 15 months after we made that argument? I think the shelf life is over for that argument. So I think, being realistic, being relevant, being responsible, and reflecting appropriately is very, very important in this context going forward, because this problem is not going to go away in a hurry. So I think the R in Rajdeep is a very important alphabet in these times.
Rajiv Bajaj, listening to you, I think I haven't heard more clear-headed views on COVID-19, and the 4 R's, relevance, responsibility, reflection, that you've spoken out today are R's which I hope people will listen to. Your name starts with R, Rajiv, so does mine. And we've given people, I hope, plenty to reflect upon and a bit of a wake-up call. We need to open up our minds. We need a better strategy for both COVID-19 and indeed perhaps for the economy. Thank you so much, Rajiv Bajaj, for joining me here on the news today. Appreciate your voice, loud and clear as always.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.